Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cloud Experts Unleashed. This week, we are talking about Adobe's updates 21 for 23 for Adobe versions, and the updates are it is update 7 and 8 respectively, and 13, 14 respectively, for depending on the version you are on, and not necessarily talking about what they are, although we will get into that for a second, but we are giving you the real world experiences. So so those of us who've been there, done that, worked with customers, you get to see and hear what we have done and what's worked, what hasn't worked, and then you can use those experiences for your own environments. And for those who watch or listen to what we do on a routine basis, you can recognize Dakota Clum. He's been with us. He's the CTO from xByte Cloud. He's a regular on the podcast, but we have a special guest this week. We have the man, the legend, Mr. Charlie Arehart. So Charlie, he is an independent consultant, and please visit arehart.org to see all of his information. So Charlie, thank you very much for joining us this week.
You bet. Glad to be here. Although I always thought that by doing it as like Carehart, it's CARE, it makes you say care. Just so you know, it is pronounced Arehart. And that's one of those things you wouldn't know. There's lots of people whose names we mess up because you don't ever necessarily hear their names. You just see them written everywhere. But yeah, it's Arehart, like Amelia, slightly variant spelling, but Carehart. Yeah, I did that to hopefully get people to say Carehart, carehart.org. But anyway, thanks for having me on. Glad to be here. Looking forward to this talk. Been enjoying your all's podcast episodes for a long time. And I'm very glad to also be an xByte customer. You guys rock.
Ooh, thank you very much for the plug. We'll take that.
You bet.
So we'll scratch each other's back. So anyway, so let's get into the meat of things. I know people would love to just listen to us chit chat for a while, because it is good to know that we're all people too. We're having fun here. But let's get into it first. We have the 2023 update 7. This is with the variable scoping was the big issue. And Dakota, why don't you give us like just a 30-second overview? I know we have other shows, and so does Charlie, about the details of this, but just quickly to set the stage, give us a 30-second summary.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Happy to. And Charlie, thanks for taking the time to join us today. So looking forward to this. So as we kind of jump into update 7 for 2023 and update 13 for ColdFusion 2021, I think the most important part of that update is the changes in implicit scope and implicit scopes and how they're actually handled. So this update was actually aimed to address a bunch of security issues. I say a bunch, or several security issues. And these changes, are meant to address potential vulnerabilities that have been identified within the ColdFusion framework. So what the change actually is now by default, implicit scopes, if you're not leveraging a prefix with any of your variable naming conventions, so for example, it could be form.name or form.lastname, or the CGI scope or anything in the CF file scope, those will actually throw an element undefined error. And we'll kind of jump into the meat of that and really what that means and what kind of changes would be required. But not only did they change just implicit scopes, this update addresses a few ColdFusion bugs. There's changes to CF file and how it handles some of the extensions it blocks by default. There's even been changes in CF document. So it's really a jammed pack update. That also includes, a core fundamental change in implicit scopes and how they're changed.
All right. So for those who are watching on YouTube, I know we're on multiple platforms now, but if you're watching on YouTube, you can see on the bottom we've posted the linked update 7. Any links we share with you today, we'll also be putting in the notes. So even if you're listening to us on Spotify or any of the podcasting audio platforms out there, you can look at the notes for that and see any of the links that we discussed. They'll be up there for you to access. But that's the link.
And you'll have a blog entry pointing it out as well, and you'll have the links and stuff in there, right?
Correct. And we on our blog entry, you see that. So anywhere we talk about this video or showcase it, the descriptions of it always have any of the links that we are going to
We
be
got a
sharing
bunch.
with you today. So, guys, Charlie, I'll drop it to you first. With this update, what are some of the experiences that the customers that you've dealt with? Has it been a major issue? A lot of code changes? What have you seen from a real world perspective?
Sure. So in my helping people, they come from all kinds of backgrounds and various sizes and experience levels, and some are just developers and some are administrators. So I see the gamut, like you guys would as well. And I'll just say that for this update in particular, with every update, some people just do the update and don't test anything, and that's bad. Many people don't read the tech notes and just do the update, and that's not smart either. And some of the updates, it's not a big deal, but some of them introduced, breaking changes. And this was one of those breaking changes. You really can't do that. And then, of course, we have some people who do have testing servers and they test things out that way, but there's a lot of people that don't, and they just do things in production, and that's their first experience with the thing, is they just apply it to production. And so, yeah, it all, how it goes depends on all those variables in general. But specifically to this one thing I do want to clarify, just to reiterate a point, is that some people are coming away from hearing about it or reading about it or trying to resolve it with the conclusion that, hey, you can't have any unscoped variables anymore. And that's not really right. And I'm not saying that Dakota's intro didn't convey it, but I just want to make the point. I find a lot of confusion where people are reading into, oh, as of this update, which, by the way, came out in March. So I call them the March updates. And then the other one is the June update. That kind of helps give people perspective. That March update, after you apply it, and assuming you don't put anything to work things around, it's not saying you can't have unscoped variables. Specifically, it's if you have unscoped variables, then CF will look through scopes to try to resolve those variables. And there's a few scopes that are internal to the request, like the variable scope. And if you're inside of a query, it'll look at the query scope and a few other things like that. And then there was always these other several scopes, like Dakota mentioned, CGI, form, URL, and so on. And traditionally, going back to the very earliest days, CF made things easy by saying, hey, you don't need to worry about what scope, we'll figure it out. Just tell us, the name, we'll figure it out. Well, that's what this update puts the kibosh to. You can't, by default anymore, just CF will figure it out. It will still figure it out if the scope can be resolved within the request. But if it has to be resolved by looking at one of those other scopes, and there's a list in the tech note for the update, Adobe gave the list of about 7 scopes. If it looked for those scopes, it no longer does as of this update. And then, as we'll talk about, there's a few different solutions to allowing it to continue if that's what you want, or of course, scoping your variables where you didn't so that those don't fail. But again, it's not that everybody has to scope every variable. Some people would argue everybody should, but this does not say you must. It just says you must if it would resolve the variable by looking at scopes that were outside of the request itself. That's the way I'm phrasing it to people.
Okay, it's a very important distinction, because I think a lot of people, they don't look at those full tech notes to get an understanding of,
or they try, and sometimes they're kind of terse and they're trying to not be wordy. That's Charlie's job. Anyway, and Dakota, Charlie mentioned in his dialogue just now about, okay, hey, if someone doesn't do something to get around the scoping issue. Now, so Adobe did allow, I believe it was a flag out there that you can set, and it will temporarily, at least until they turn off that availability to use the flag, it will allow kind of Adobe to creep out and look at all the scopes. So, and I know you and I have talked about this. What are your thoughts on, should people just go ahead and do the update to take advantage of the other benefits and use that flag and not update their scope until they're ready, or should they just kind of bite the bullet in the beginning and just do it? And in a real world experience, what are people doing? How are people kind of reacting either way?
Yeah, I think I've seen a combination of both. I'd say the more prevalent one would be clients have opted to use that JVM flag or the application.CFC flag temporarily as they make code adjustments. I think it's important to highlight with this update, it also addresses even a security like CVE vulnerability. And it's not clear if that's related to the scope changes that were, addressed in this particular update either. I assume not. So there are important parts of the update you can start taking benefit of, or receiving benefits from, while you have that JVM flag in place that works around the implicit scope changes. The consideration being, of course, it's not something you can just set and forget. I think as soon as you jump to, let's say, from update 7 to update 8, and you had that JVM flag set, I think it actually can get rolled back. So it's something you have to remember that you've set. Is that not it? Really?
Yeah, no. So there, and that's great. I'm glad you guys are bringing this up. So let's just clarify for those who didn't see the tech note yet. The point is, in the tech note in March that Adobe came out with, they said, if you want to add this JVM argument, we'll change the default behavior to let you search those scopes implicitly. So if you add that JVM argument in the startup args of CF, then we're saying it would let your code work okay without needing to change it. Because it's a JVM argument, once it's in there, nothing can take it away until you take it away. Now, I think maybe what you were thinking of is they did say in the tech note, and this is another source of confusion, they said future releases of ColdFusion will not support that JVM argument. Well, let's be clear about that, because that's another source of real confusion. The way they said it in the tech note, like if you're on CF 2021 and you read the tech note, you'd think, is that the next update, or is that CF 2023? Well, wait a minute. 2023 is already out. Well, if you don't know, it also affected 2023. So if you're on 2023, you're looking at this going, okay, is it going to not work as of the next update? And no, what it is that, and they've clarified this now, it's the next release, which they don't ever say the name of it, but we all know it's going to be ColdFusion 2025. They've even announced that publicly at conferences, but formally they don't announce what its name's going to be. So the point is that JVM arg will not work in CF 2025 and beyond. Now, being a JVM argument, somebody might go, what does that mean? It's going to break? No. The way those JVM arguments are designed, they're a -D argument. And that just means it's passed to ColdFusion as an environment variable on the JVM arguments line. If ColdFusion chooses to ignore it, it's just going to ignore it. Then that's what's going to happen. In 25 and beyond, that argument would be ignored. So they're saying this is your chance, if you don't want to fix your code, to use scopes where you should to avoid this problem. Again, it's not that you must scope everything, but where there's a problem, if you don't scope it, it will fail unless you fix the code or add the JVM argument. Or as Dakota said, they also clarify in the tech note, there's an application level setting. It's called search implicit scopes. It's actually not new. It's been there since CF 2016. And back in 2016, it was added as an application level setting because you could say, I don't want my code to search implicitly in these other scopes. You could decide, I consciously don't want that to happen. So you could set it to false. If you didn't set it, then it defaulted to true. And what's changed as of this update is that now defaults to false instead of true. And the JVM arg can change it to true for all of CF. Or it is important to catch that at an application level, you can say, I don't care if it's true at the application level and make it false for my application because I don't want it to be searching implicit scopes, or vice versa. It could be set to false at the JVM level, but you could say, well, my app isn't ready yet. So you could set it to true in your application. And I do want to clarify, you can do it either in application CFC or in application CFM. With application CFM, you do it as a CF application attribute. So it's just called search implicit scopes. Again, it's not new. It's been there since 2016. I do want to share one tip. Had you guys encountered anybody who said they did it in their application CFC and it didn't work? Have you guys encountered that yet?
I've seen one or two reports about it, and typically it's, the application just needed to actually be reloaded to pick up that flag.
Possibility. There's another, and it's a really important one, but it's subtle. And I mentioned it briefly in my stuff that I've written. And I'm going to probably do another blog post on it because it's very important. And let's get it out. So Adobe shows in their examples, you'd say in an application CFC, you'd say this dot search implicit scopes equals true or false. this dot. And people have been doing application CFC go, oh yeah, that's how you set application level settings. You say this dot name, this dot session management, and all that stuff. Well, here's a little thing that some people don't catch. Where do you put that? It's very important where you put that. Because if you put that in your on application start, like you might logically think, well, sure, it's startup application variables. Sure, that's where I would do it. No, that won't work. Those do not get assigned to the application settings. They get put in this scope of the CFC, but they're not in the application settings. You go, wait a minute, what? Yes, listen, this is very important. And you can prove it yourself. There's a function in ColdFusion called get application metadata. So if you create a page on which you do a get application dump, CF dump or write dump of get application metadata, it's a function, open close parentheses. It shows you all the application settings, whether you set them or didn't set them, the defaults or what you changed them to, it shows it. About 20 things, 30 things. You try this. If you set this dot search implicit scopes and you do it in the application on application start or whatever you want, on request start, on request, when you look at the request that ran that application CFC, you're going to see it didn't pick it up. You need to put such settings outside of those methods. Those have been around a long time. You might remember that used to be called a pseudo constructor. Anything that was outside of the methods in an application CFC or in any CFC, anything that's outside of the methods of the CFC, starting in CF7, they called it the pseudo constructor. And there's another bunch of discussion about that. But the key is, if you look closely at any place where Adobe documents setting such settings, they always show it not being in a method. But they don't make any point about it. They just show it. And we go, well, that's what you're supposed to do. But it's very reasonable and easy for somebody, especially somebody scrambling with this problem who maybe doesn't otherwise bother setting any settings. They would just go, put it in the on application start, right? And they'll just do it. And it won't fail, but it won't do what you expect it to do. You've got to put it outside of the method.
Oh, great point. And I know, Dakota, you and I have talked about, okay, hey, is it a good decision to set this? Because what Adobe has done is they've put out there, hey, this is a vulnerability. No one's used it in the wild yet, or at least as we've been told, but now they've put out there that, hey, yes, there is the potential of someone using this to access the scope when you're not intending it to. So they've kind of documented that, hey, some bad actor out there will probably be doing this. So if you consciously go out there and you're not updating your code and you set that flag, you're allowing people to be able to get access to your stuff and with a known vulnerability. What are your comments on that? Should people be setting the flag or?
Yeah, I think it's definitely appropriate that Adobe has provided, and to Charlie's earlier point about the search implicit scopes being available since 2016. I think it's important that Adobe has provided a means of working around the issue and allowing developers enough time to make changes, the necessary changes to support the new requirements, at least for implicit scopes. I'd probably also add, some of these applications are 20 years, 20 plus years old. They've been getting maintained for a long time. So the concept of scoping everything by default, may not have been practiced, except for the last 5 years, let's just say. So now, there's years and years of backlog to go through and
legacy
kind of
code. Yeah. So. And that's why this is a big deal, because some people go, I'll just do the update and we should be good. Like, no, you got a lot of old code. Sometimes it's in a framework you use or some library that you use, and you don't even think about it. So yeah, just to summarize, the point is those application level settings are there for you to either override the JVM setting or the default, one or the other, and either to make it, quote, more secure or less secure, whatever suits your need. And you're right, Ryan, people do need to think, don't just make it insecure. There's a reason why they're saying. And to that point, I know you've got a link to Pete Freitag's site. He did a post where he talked about it. We'll talk more in a moment about a tool of his that'll help us find these things. But Pete, early on, like a year or two ago, maybe 3 years ago, did a blog post where he discussed the issue, which he calls scope injection. And I don't want to try to elaborate on it here because it's easy to misconstrue. But if you read his stuff, and I linked to it in my blog post, you guys might have links to it as well. If you read his stuff, he explains it, and just leave it at that. You should read about it. It's not like the kind of vulnerability that leads to remote code execution, but it's the kind of vulnerability where somebody could make your code act in a way different than what you'd expect. And we'll just leave it at that. I'm not saying that it doesn't deserve more, but that we could get lost in the weeds.
Is that link in your June updates blog post?
In my blog post in March, when the update came out in March, because this is about the March update 7 and 13. We got to keep that straight. But in my blog post, and I think Adobe might have I don't think they mentioned it in their blog post, but in the community forum discussion that came up. So anyway, we'll talk in a bit about tools for helping find these problems. But that was our discussion of how you can mitigate it with some app or server level workarounds.
All right. So Dakota, getting into the some of the tools. I know we were talking of several options. One of which is a jar file that Adobe's put out to allow you to log some of the issues you're having with scope. And we had a customer who they're very high trafficked site. And what are your experiences with that customer and logging?
Yeah. So there's an unscoped variable tool that can be applied that helps identify, unscoped variables that are referencing implicit scopes that can, help streamline your development process and update the code. What we've observed, particularly with one client who, gets a lot of requests, let's just say, and has a large code base that they maintain, we have seen an element of overhead get introduced as a result of that. I don't know that that's necessarily, application breaking, but it's certainly something to take note of in terms of, when you see a performance change and all of a sudden you're logging, what could be thousands of lines of code, depending on, how many unscoped variables we're really talking about. It's something to keep in mind. Now, granted, we've also had customers apply it in smaller applications, or, I'd say a normal sized application, and they didn't skip a beat, and, things were as is and operational. So
there is a difference for enterprise customers versus maybe just your typical website traffic customer, and kind of where they would see any kind of performance hits. That's interesting. Yeah, because we do deal with some of the larger enterprise who will, and again, as you mentioned, depending on the size of the issue for them, they will see some of that. Charlie, and have you worked with customers in a similar fashion?
Yeah, and I want to back up a bit about that, because I feel like we might have jumped the gun in discussing the implications of that feature without explaining the feature. So let me just give a quick perspective on it. In April, Adobe came out with a tech note. In April, remember the update was in March. In April, Adobe came out with a tech note. You could have missed it. They don't mention it in the tech note. It's terrible that they don't. And they barely mentioned it anywhere. And that tech note is what we're now talking about. It's a feature that they've implemented. They call it a patch. It's the first time they've used the term patch. And it's a jar, as they mentioned in passing. It's a jar that they list the link to in the tech note. And you put that jar in what's called the live updates folder of your instance. Read that tech note, or I did a blog post last night elaborating on this. So I don't want to repeat everything in the post, but let me just clarify. Literally, you just put that jar in that live updates folder and restart CF. And now here's the key. If you set implicit scopes to true, or you either JVM argument or in your application settings, or if you're on a version prior to update from March, I'll talk about that in a second, you can put that jar in and it will now log. Let's make sure this is clear to everybody. It will log when you have code that tries to reach out. Because there's no scope, it tries to reach out and it can't resolve the variable within the request, and it tries to reach out to one of these other scopes. That's the implicit thing. It's called implicit scope searching. it's not the scopes are implicit, but the searching of the scopes is implicit because there's no scope defined. So CF looks through the local ones and then it goes, oh, don't find it here. Let me look in these other ones. It's when it reaches out to look at those other ones that this feature, this patch, this jar, this technique that Adobe's implemented, let me be clear, they'll just log a line. It's a cool thing because they'll log a line and that line will say when it happened, what file it was, path and file name, the real file name, not some weird crap like if it's an include, you get the wrong one. No, the real file and the name of the variable and the scope that it reached out to resolve it in. And that's it. One line for any such request like that does that. And it's a runtime thing. So it's not scanning your code. We'll talk about, I thought we might have talked about tools for scanning your code first, because that's what most people would think of as, hey, aren't there tools that can just scan my code? We'll get to that. But this would literally log when a request tries to access a variable in a way that leads it to look in one of these scopes. So again, the key there is you have to be letting it do that. If you set it to false, if you say search implicit scope is false, or you don't set it and the default changes after this update, then the code's just going to fail. But if you put this jar in place and restart CF, then if it's set to true one way or the other, then if your code accesses such a variable that way, then it's logged. And that's really helpful because now you can look at the log and say, do we have a problem? And you can give that log to people, developers, whoever, administrators, and say, here's your problem, go fix it. As Dakota said, it's going to log it each time it happens. Now, I want to be clear. It does not, again, it does not scan your code and tell you everywhere in that request that it's going to happen. It's a runtime thing. When it happens, it'll log it. So some requests, it'll only happen once. Some, it might happen 5 or 10 times in a request. And that's where Dakota's point is a good one. In a busy server environment, that could lead to, hundreds or thousands of lines being logged. And to turn it off, all you can do is take that jar out of that live updates folder and restart CF. There's no controlling mechanism. There's no JVM arg. There's no app setting. You put the jar in and it starts logging if it's true and if your code reaches into those scopes. And again, I did a blog post last night with this in much more detail. And I think you have the link for that. Yeah, there you go.
I do.
So don't miss the helpful feature identifying implicit scope searching. There you go. And it was easy to miss because it was just a tech note out of the blue and it's barely mentioned anywhere. So I'm glad you guys brought it up. But we will talk about other techniques and tools.
Oh, yeah. And so to Charlie's point, yeah, this one is a great one to kind of do, and maybe even a good one to do after the fact. So if you think you cleaned everything up and you scanned your code, but you don't want to take any chances, you say, hey, let me set this flag. We add this jar, let it run for a month,
or a week, or now, whatever makes sense.
Whatever. Yep. Yeah, depending on how big an audience you have there hitting all the.
Did you succeed? Right. It's useful for that. Or if you haven't yet touched your code, how big of a deal is it? Because it doesn't lie. Whatever code tries to access a scope implicitly outside of the request, it'll get logged. I think it's great. And I hadn't heard of any performance problems, but you guys certainly have different kinds of users and they bring that stuff to you. So you'd know about some things that the rest of us maybe wouldn't hear in the community. But I hadn't had anybody really say, oh, that was a terrible thing that we did. But it could happen, sure, right? And it might be a modest amount of, did you have a sense? Was it like percentages, like 5% overhead?
5%, yeah.
Yeah. So some people would pay that price for the benefit that it brings. That's the thing. I just want to stress how much it's great to know that it's there and to understand it and, try it. The cost, I'd say the cost is worth the benefit. But anyway, there's definitely other tools that you might want to consider instead or in addition. And that's probably what I'm going to move to next.
Yeah, before we get it, so this is, we said, a good cleanup tool. And so before you do that, and you may even run it and just not do any of the cleanup first, just kind of run this to let you know how you're doing. But the scanning tools out there, some of the more important ones. We talked about, or Charlie, you'd mentioned one of them, Fixinator, out there from Peter Freitag. Is that the best one? Is that what you're seeing most people using Just because a lot of people have Fixinator already, or
Right.
or
Right. So let's be clear
what's
about
your
that.
experience as far as what tools are they using?
Sure. So if you have Fixinator, Fixinator, I think you have a link to it.
Boom,
There you
right
go.
there. Look at
Fixinator
that.
is a tool that Pete came out with some years ago, and it can scan your code for security vulnerabilities. And Adobe also has one we'll mention, but this was around the same time they both came out. I think, and Pete, they just work differently, so each has their benefit, each has their pros and cons. Pete's is not free, but it's very good, and it's in ways better. But anyway, let's say that he modified it in March, April to now also identify these unscoped variables, and that's great. So you just run the code.
And
against
here's
those
Adobe's
variables.
link too, down there, so you guys can
Right,
again.
and that's the ColdFusion Security Code Analyzer, which is in ColdFusion Builder, either the old version that was built on Eclipse or the new version that's built on VS Code. And that's another whole subject of discussion. A, some people didn't even know that there's ColdFusion Builder on VS Code. B, some people go, I don't use that because I can't get it to work. But you've got to get it to work to be able to benefit from it. And that's one of to some people, the cons of it is getting that working right can be a challenge. But again, the point is that security code analyzer feature of VS Code can now detect use of such unscoped variables, and then Fixinator can detect it. Now, I just want to say to both of those, doing such static scanning of your code is really challenging because it isn't that, again, it can't just be that find unscoped variables. They're not necessarily wrong. It's unscoped variables, which if they're not resolved by a variable that's local to the request, then CF reaches out to these other scopes. You really can't determine that statically. That's a runtime thing. So, but I don't mean at all to discourage people trying the tools. Definitely give them a shot. You may find that they report a lot more than would really trip over. Have you guys found that yet in any assessment of the tools on your people's codes bases?
We haven't seen any hiccups or anything like that from it, but I'm sure there's certainly been instances. So I think it's a very valid point.
Oh,
I saw that water.
It's backwards. It's right to me. It's a CF.
It's right to us.
It's right.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Those were given out at CF Camp in Germany back in June.
So I had a question to both of you guys. So, and actually, first off, with Adobe's tool, does that also recommend fixes, or is that just, hey, here this set of code could be an issue? Because if I recall from Pete's blog, the examples he shows, there is an option to apply a fix, or he'll recommend some potential fixes. I don't know how.
I have thoughts, but I'll let Dakota go first.
Yeah. Well, I'll probably just say that I know Fixinator does make recommendations for fixes. I'm not sure exactly what the code analyzer proposes, particularly in the VS Code context. So, Charlie, if you want to shed any insight there, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So they do both recommend, they both identify security issues to be fixed. They tell you where it is in the code. They tell you how to fix it. And the difference with Fixinator is it's got a feature that says, go ahead and fix it. And so you can click, button, basically. It's a command line tool, but you tell it, fix the code. And that's a great thing to some people's minds, and it's a scary thing to other people's minds. And of course, you have version control. That would be the right way to go, well, I'll give it a shot. If it doesn't, I don't like what it did, we can undo the changes. But so both tools do make recommendations. In the case of the CF Security Code Analyzer, again, whether it was in the old CF Builder or the new CF Builder, it's an interface that presents a report on screen of the problems and how to fix them. And you can even create a report from it. And Pete's can produce reports as well. So again, we could have a whole discussion about those tools, both of them, and helping people. Because trust me, there's a lot of people who are like, wait, what? There's tools that can analyze my code to find security issues? What is this crazy magic? Why haven't I heard about it? And, the CF Builder one is free. Pete's is commercial. CF Builder one let me just get this out. The CF Builder one, called the Security Code Analyzer, that's what Adobe calls it, It was introduced in CF 2016. It's not new, but it used to be that you could only use it with ColdFusion Enterprise. You had to have an enterprise license. You couldn't use it with the developer edition, couldn't use it with the trial. It had to be an enterprise license. Couldn't use it with standard. I think you could maybe use the trial, but you couldn't use it with the developer, couldn't use it with standard, because the builder interface reaches out to the server and talks to it to do the analysis. And if it detected that the server you told it to talk to, even if it's your local development environment, if it's not an enterprise license, it used to not work. Well, they lifted that in CF 2021. So again, this is news to people because they didn't have enterprise. I'm not even going to think about it. And the word didn't spread. I'd say only 5-10% of people that use ColdFusion know that there's such a security code analyzer. And I want to say again, Pete created his to address that. He doesn't require use of RDS. It's just a very different approach. So I'm not saying, there's pros and cons to each, is what I want to leave it at. And again, it's worthy of its own discussion another time.
So interesting as far as different approaches for this to kind of find the issues and then getting into it. So we've talked about, okay, hey, what options do you have to get around it temporarily? Stressing the temporarily piece of it. We talked about the scanning tools that are out there. The various ones, Fixnair can fix it. The Adobe one is offered to everybody. We talked about. Then we also talked about the jar file that's in the tech notes. Take a look at Charlie's blog to get links to all that to make sure you understand that more. And then we talked about some of the slight potential impact to performance that you may see in that. So we've touched on a lot of issues with that unscoped variable. And I know in talking to Dakota, we've dealt with customers who have had no issues with it, other ones that have had issues with it. And interesting thing, and this is going to be true with the next discussion too on update 8. But it's sometimes some customers have been excited because it gave them a reason to do housekeeping and find the old code and the problems they saw. They were excited because, hey, you know what? I don't use that. I get to fix my stuff and just delete all that old stuff that we don't use anymore. I need an excuse to tell my boss I need to do cleanup, and now I have it because Adobe's put out this vulnerability update. So that and Adobe's saying, "Hey, boss, I got to go through all the technical debt." And now
that's exactly it. It's about, do you want to pay off that technical debt? And some people are responsible and have an abundance mentality and see it as an opportunity, and plenty of people go, "Oh, shoot me! I don't want to have to deal with this crap." And that's where those workarounds are there. But you're taking a risk. But it's great that you have the flexibility. And the challenge for a lot of this stuff is just understanding what the options are, the pros and cons. So that's where I'm really glad we've had this discussion. And the first half was on that update from March. Now we'll talk about the one from June, and there's some similar things to consider with that.
Yeah, so Dakota, we'll go to you first, and can you give us the 30-second little elevator pitch on Charlie called it the June update, which is CF 2023 update 14 or 21 update 21.
By the way, no,
update 14.
2023 update 8 and 2021 update 14.
Thank you. I'm looking at notes.
A soup of things. Yeah, no, trust me. Go ahead.
There's so many numbers out there.
Yes.
Many numbers, people. I got a list of blog posts. They're expecting me to keep track of all of this. I don't know what they're thinking. So thank you, Charlie. Yes.
You bet.
The good news, not to keep up with 2018 now either. So there was a period there where we were getting 3 at a time.
All 3, that's right.
Right, we got a few months left, and 25 is going to be out. So,
and let's not even talk about the Java versions, 11 and 17, and then 11.011 and 17.011. It gets very complicated. But go ahead.
Definitely. Okay, well, yeah, I'll jump kind of right into update 8 and update 14 respectively. The big change with update 8 is around the default encryption algorithm that ColdFusion uses. Specifically, it's been changed from an encryption algorithm called CFMX compat, and they no longer offer that as an algorithm. You will have to update that to use a new algorithm, currently supported algorithm, which is essentially stronger than what ColdFusion's or Adobe's encryption algorithm defaulted to, which in this case is CFMX compat. Not only that, this update also includes 2 CVE. I believe it's 2, maybe 1, but it doesn't contain some CVE vulnerabilities that were also addressed. So again, it's a security update. The encryption algorithm changes are meant to address, one issue or one underlying issue that they've addressed. And then the CVE updates, are obviously addressing 2 separate vulnerabilities there. So I will say, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. You got it.
I was just going to add that, from a change perspective, at least in my experiences, and Charlie, I'm very interested in hearing yours. This, the impact of this update, or, the required changes of this update has seemed less frequent compared to the implicit scope variables. But it is very important to still look into what the changes are, what it means for your application. So
I got a follow-up, Dakota. And it's just my curiosity as you were talking about this. Because you and I have talked about, okay, hey, that was the least secure of the algorithms that you could select from. So what makes something more secure or less secure when it comes to all this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Algorithm is, there's complex topics around it, and what allows a system to be secured using these various algorithms. I think in the case of CF, and in this particular update, it's just a dated algorithm. Presumably, it's been identified as something that can be broken into or solved to some degree. And there's just better algorithms out there. So it's really how the encryption's occurring, and what's preventing things from accessing it. But
okay, yeah, interesting. Yeah, we hadn't talked about this ahead of time, so thank you for entertaining me and letting me put you on the spot a little bit about that. And that's your favorite thing that I do sometimes.
yeah.
So, Charlie, on this one, are you experiencing the same thing, that the number of requests, and it's happened more recently, so that in itself may lead to less requests?
That's what I was going to say, is that it just came out in June, so it's been just a month since it came out, and so many people drag their feet. So we're not going to see the implications of it for some time for most people. Now to it, let me back up, because I didn't want to interrupt Dakota, but I do want to clarify. It's not that the CFMX compat, which is that old sneaky algorithm, it's not that they've taken it away. You said that. I don't know if you meant to say that, but you did say that, and I don't want people to hear the wrong thing. You can still use it. You shouldn't use it. The key is it was the default. And I just think it would help to back up for a second to the crux of the issue. Because again, if people haven't read the tech note, or if they've cursory glanced at it, it could have come away with the wrong conception. So this is a blog post I was trying to write today and get out before the before our episode today, but I will, and we'll have it in the notes by the time this is posted. But I just want to say this real quick, because it's easy to get wrong, and that's what I'm finding, is that as I help people, it's easy to misconstrue things. It's if there's 7 functions that are listed in the tech note. There's 7 ColdFusion functions. 2 are about encryption, 2 are about decryption, 1 is about hashing, and the other 3 are about randomization. So there's 7 CFML functions listed in the tech note with a link to the docs about the function. And if you look at it, you'll see that each of those functions has an argument that names optionally an encryption algorithm. And yes, even the hash has an argument that names an encryption algorithm. Some people are like, it's hashing, it doesn't matter. No, it does matter. Anyway, the point is, all 7 of them have an argument that can optionally name an encryption algorithm. And it's not always the same position. Some it's the second argument, some it's a third. So you just have to look at the docs. And the deal is, as of this update, by default, instead of, if you don't name the algorithm, this is the crux of it. If you don't name the encryption algorithm in that argument that can name it, if you don't name it, then until this update, it used that old sneaky one called CFMX compat. As of this update, by default, it will change to not using that. It'll use a new one. And hey, guess what? the one it changes to using differs based on the function. So if you look at the docs and look at the tech note, they explain that the randoms use this and the hash uses that and the encrypts use this. So the point is it changes to something different. Well, why is that a big deal? Here's why it's a big deal. If you've used these encryption or hash or random functions in the past to create something you stored in a database that was encrypted or stored on a file that was encrypted, or you created a link that was sent an email for people to click the link and unsubscribe, anything like that that you've done, if you didn't name the algorithm, then that was done then with the old stinky CFMX compat. And that's not as bad as not doing any encryption, but it's not as good as doing a better encryption. Yeah, so here's the crux. If you did that, now if you don't accommodate that, if you've got that same code that's decrypting that thing, when it decrypts it, if you don't specify the algorithm after this update, it changes to using the new algorithm by default, and it won't decrypt it properly. And either you'll get an error. And I've seen people have errors where it wasn't on the decrypt function, it was on the result that was then passed to some other thing, and that thing failed. So it gets really complicated insofar as resolving it and knowing. And my bigger point is, you may not notice this for weeks or months. Maybe it's an email that got sent out and few people click the link to do whatever, like the unsubscribe, and they look at it a week later or a month later and they click it and it's going to fail. And that sucks, because what can you do, right? You can't withdraw the things. Now, what Adobe talks about in the tech note is, they kind of hint at, like, if you are storing stuff in the database, then what you ought to do is you got to decrypt the data that's in the database using that old algorithm. Got to decrypt it either in place or in another column or in a file or in memory or whatever, and then encrypt it with the new thing that you're going to want to use and put that back in place in the database, and then change your code to use that new algorithm to decrypt it going forward and to encrypt it going forward. So again, I know I said a lot. The crux is, look at the docs for the tech note. There's 7 functions. They all have an argument that names an encryption function. If you don't name it, that's where trouble begins, because it's changing the default as of this update. And lastly, they, just like with the March update, the June update, they added a JVM argument. And if you want to put that JVM argument in, you can say, I want to use CFMX compat as the default. Please make my life easier. And I'm really glad Dakota clarified the updates have more than just these matters we're discussing. And this isn't we didn't intend this episode to be about the updates in general. Our focus was these weird things about the particular aspects of the one in March about the search implicit scopes and the one here in June about the CFMX compat. Those are just one of several things that the updates do. So you do need to read the tech notes to see what else the updates do. But the good news is that if you want to deal with these issues, in both cases, Adobe has provided a way to, like, maybe put training wheels on your ColdFusion instance to say, while you sort things out, you can at least get to the update. And you're putting in the training wheel. That means you're technically back to being insecure the way you were for all these years, but it's the way you were for all these years. At least you can take your time to sort things out and get the other benefits of the update. That's the key. There's more to the updates than these things, but these things are the big things that you need to understand and deal with. And again, the tech note discusses that JVM argument, so don't worry about writing it down from what I've said. And I think you have the links to both those June. Yep. Right. So there's the CF 2023 update 8 and the CF 2021 update.
I don't have the 21. You'll have to go
Okay,
there.
well, it's CF 2021 update 14. And if you guys haven't caught it, those URLs, you can just change the numbers.
There's a pattern.
Right there, you can just change 2023 to 2021, and you change the 8 to 14, hit submit, and you'll see the 2021 update 14 tech note. Simple as that.
So that was an important clarification on, and I didn't realize that difference in that in the notes, and that's worse than I thought, because it's not going to error out on you.
Yeah, maybe
your
not.
Users, I mean, if you have a password that's been encrypted in the database, as you said, the users are going to find this, and you're going to be left not knowing. You're just going to set the flag. But let's say that someone didn't make the change. So if you've not set a default, it uses the new algorithm for encrypting the password. You
or
have no
decrypting
idea.
the old one that was encrypted the old way.
Well,
yeah, it uses a new decryption algorithm to decrypt something that was encrypted the old way with the old encryption algorithm. It's bad.
Well, my thoughts, how bad it gets is that you don't necessarily know who now has stored the passwords in the new encryption algorithm.
Yeah.
So you may have 20 people or 100 people who've now stored passwords in the new algorithm. So in order for you to fix it, you've got to then decide which algorithm are you going to use to decrypt it and then re-encrypt it using a new one. And so those 20 people just may be hosed because.
Well, it may feel like a tangled mess, but if it's just a database thing, you could try decrypting it one way or the other way. It's going to be one or the other. And if it decrypts successfully, okay, you know which one it was, and then you'd want to just encrypt it the way you want to go going forward. So I don't mean to diminish the problem. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I'm saying it's not like it's a rat's nest of possibilities. It's two. It's either the old one or the new one.
True.
Or one can choose one. And, we didn't talk much about that. And you asked earlier on about the security and basically it's the cryptography behind all this stuff. Each of those functions, if you look at the docs for them, they'll list the various available encryption algorithms and decryption algorithms. And they're all there and they're discussed. There's Blowfish and AES and all that. And those who care about that stuff can choose among them to pick what you want. And let's just wrap up, and I don't mean wrap up the conversation, but wrap up my point here to say, if you choose one and you use that, you're good. You're done. This is not an issue for you. If you specify the argument in the functions, remember the 7 functions, if you specify the argument from the start, you're good. Nothing's going to change. This is only affecting those who didn't specify the argument. The default that's used by CF is changing. And it's a weird kind of thing for them to do. This and the last one, I just think they're weird things for Adobe to drop on us on an update like this. I'd have thought that should be something done in a new version. And there's 2 arguments, right? The other argument, if you do it in a new version and everybody goes, I can't run my code, I'm not going to go to the new version, then there's no adoption of the new version because everybody feels like, oh, it's too complicated. But when you do it in an update, man, it's dropping a rock in the pond that everybody's going to feel the ripples and waves, because some of these are really waves more than ripples, and you either got to deal with it or don't do the update, and that's not good. So remember, your choices are don't do the update, that's not good. Do the update, put it in the JVM argument that kind of undoes it. The analogy I've used, or the phrase I've used, is these updates traded security for compatibility. Adobe opted to traded compatibility for security. It was more important to implement a more secure thing at the risk of losing compatibility. But they offer this option that says, thank you very much, but no, I need to trade your security for compatibility. I need my code to run. And as Dakota said, each of these updates does several things. We're just talking about undoing one of those several things in each update. And for some people, pragmatically, it makes more sense to undo them. But that's the second option. You undo them. But boy, you can't just forget about it. You got to make yourself a note. We've got to take care of that problem because it's going to come back to bite us. And by the way, Adobe did say with this CFMX compat JVM argument that they added to revert it to use CFMX compat as true, that will not be there in 2025. They were a little more careful in their wording this time to say it. I don't know if they say the word CF 2025, but the next release that comes after 2023. That argument will also not work on 2025 and beyond. So if you're on 2023 or 2021 and you do that special JVM argument, you bought yourself some time. You're exposing yourself to some risk, but it's the same risk you've been in for 20 years. So it's like, it may not matter to you, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying the only thing with that one is that Adobe is now exposed that it made the risk more public.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's, one would actually, let's back up because we didn't discuss this. When you do any of these things, you don't just specify an encryption algorithm, you also specify the key. And that key is only known to you and your code. So if somebody intercepts some email that was encrypted with the old one, well, they don't have the decryption key. So it may be easier to break, but they don't have the key. That's the key, is it could conceivably be easier to break. Well, for most people's needs, I mean, if it's an unsubscribed link that's got a random, encrypted value of something, what's the big deal if somebody breaks it? But if it's data in a database and it's somehow very important, secure data, if a bad guy could somehow get your database or through of another vulnerability, get your data out of the database, then it might be easier for them to break that encryption of what you stored.
In combination with historically what we've seen is people who've not necessarily cleansed all their form inputs, so that they're allowing there's potential SQL injection vulnerabilities for companies if they're
right. That's ways
their
that
form
they
inputs.
get in and
so
get access to data that they shouldn't get access to.
The combination to do that is, okay, look, if you've not sanitized your form inputs, you open yourself up for someone to be able to get into your database, pull data out, and then with the knowledge that there's more vulnerabilities, that is something that now there is an enhanced risk. So you should be going through the efforts. To be honest, we've seen, because there's two of them relatively close to each other, that have caused code change updates. We've seen less adoption with these than we have ever in the past.
Which is too bad.
Yeah, because you'd have to have updated update 7, and then said, okay, yeah, now I want to go through 8 as well, or at least do both. Have to go through both of those code changes to go to update 8. So we've seen the less and
slower adoption.
Slower adoption. The nice thing with this most recent one is it has not really we've not seen the impact, and it's been very little for those who have gone forward with it.
But it may be a lurking thing that won't bite them for some time.
Yeah, they may not realize that, hey, this one function I didn't realize that I didn't specifically set something, and I'm not going to see it for months until someone uses that random function.
And that's what my blog post, I'm going to talk about how you just use your editor to search for. I'll just say real quick, you'll be searching for encrypt or decrypt, because that covers all 4 variants of that. If you look at the 7, there's 4 that start with either encrypt or decrypt, and then there's hash, and then there's rand, and that covers the 3 random functions. So there's 4 strings to look for: encrypt, decrypt, hash, or rand. Look for that with whatever editor you like to use or search tools, and I'll talk about those in my blog post. Just look for those, and then, assuming it's not in a comment, not in some text, and not JavaScript code, then does it have the argument that specifies an encryption algorithm? And for that, you'll need to look at the docs and say, what is the algorithm? What is the argument that names the algorithm? Because it might be a variable, and you can't tell by looking at the variable that's an encryption algorithm. So you may not be able to look at the code and go, yeah, I do, or no, I don't specify the algorithm. But if you do, you're done. If you don't, now you got to deal with this problem. And either you deal with it the way we've talked about, or you throw in that JVM argument that buys you time until CF 2025. But
now I guess you could even further cheat and, as you mentioned, specify the old default.
Yes, you can. Absolutely, you can. That's right. And that's good. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's why when Dakota said what he said at the outset, I was like, well, no, some people are just throwing it in there. So at least it's there and it's intentional. Because I had somebody who said they interpreted it as Dakota had said it, and they thought, well, I can't solve my problem because I've got to go through and re-encrypt everything. Like, no. You could just put in the JVM argument to be that value, and you don't have to use that special JVM argument. Sorry, you can put in the argument to the function that names CF Mexcompat as what you want to use, and then you don't need to bother with the JVM argument, and then you can deal with changing that when it makes sense, however it makes sense for you. But yes, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good point to make.
Yeah, because you may not need to. You, as you said, if it's just some hash that's on a take me off your list,
be that big of a deal.
Who cares? Yeah. But if it's passwords, you may be thinking, okay.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject in that regard. Everybody's got to look closely. But I'll just say that I think most people's uses of it, it's not, high security stuff. And when you consider that if they get the decryption key, it doesn't matter what algorithm you use. If they can somehow get your key, they're going to get in. But the harder it is to break in. I mean, the other thing I say to people is that, are people really trying to get this stuff from you? Is your stuff really that important? But some people are, right? Or they don't know, and they just think, let's go fishing. And people, put effort into trying to break in, and then they put in effort into trying to decrypt. And you know, some people, maybe that's important, but for most people, these are not the critical issues that it would be for others. And just getting your code to work, right, is the first focus and priority. Just get it working one way or the other. So
now, if you are an old school and storing credit card numbers, then you should 100% be looking at better ways to encrypt your data.
Well, if you're not encrypting them at all, right?
Yeah, then you're
right. And then we should say for passwords, right? Because people, who don't think about this stuff a lot, they just don't give it thought. You shouldn't be storing passwords. You shouldn't even bother encrypting passwords. You should use the hash function. And if you've never done that, I know you'll go like, what am I supposed to do? You can read about it. You hash it, and then you compare when someone types something in, you hash what they typed in and you compare with what's in the database. And if they match, then it's the same password. And someone looking at the hash value in the database can't see the password. So it's old stuff. But if you're just, so many of us fall into habits of it's a password. I store in the database. Okay. It's a password and I encrypt it. Okay. Well, hash it. It's probably the better way to go. And there's times when that's the right thing to do. And then for some people, they'll have reasons why, no, I really need to encrypt it. And these are all bigger discussions that everybody should have. And as you said earlier, Ryan, sometimes it's forcing people to think through these things and go, why are we doing what we're doing? Maybe we should do it a different way. So it's kind of cleaning house. You're right. It's a good way to look at it. It's forcing you to do some spring cleaning.
Yeah. Now, I have not, and I'll ask you guys, I have not seen any tools that will do the fixing for you, like there was with the first one. Like there's nothing that you can say, hey, here's my database, here's my table, here's my column, here's my old
method. That's another subject, right? First, we'll talk about, is there tools to help you find the code that has the problem? And then second, if you do have such problems, what can you do with your data? So that's two different dimensions of the problem. And I'll just say first, I'm not aware that Pete's done anything with Fixinator. And I don't believe that Adobe's done anything with the security code analyzer. And they have not come out with any such tool as that patch that they did for the other one. And they could, and maybe they will. That one came out a couple weeks after the March update. It came out in April. Maybe this month, Adobe will come out with a patch that lets you identify when do you use these 7 functions without naming an encryption algorithm. That's what they could do. If they would do that, that'd be great. And I hope they will. But until then, I'm not aware of there being any tool otherwise to help you. And so that's why I'll just show people how to kind of effectively search for it.
Yeah, it's true. Even the scanning, you're right. The scanning nor fixing. Has there been any real push on this most recent update?
And partly it's because people aren't complaining. I think, like you said, there's fatigue. There's probably people that are still stuck on pre-7, for 2023, pre-March updates. And so they haven't even encountered yet the June update issue. And that's the funny thing about all this stuff, is that you'll need certain classes of people to encounter the problems, to bring it to Adobe's ear, that Adobe will pay attention to because of the volume and the importance and the money and whatever it is that motivates them to do stuff. So we may find soon that they will do something like that. By the way, one more thing before I forget, I mentioned in my blog post, but I want to bring it out. I discovered actually the tech note for that update, the patch. I'm sorry, we're throwing around a lot of things here. The patch that came out in April that helps you log when you reference variables that are found in scopes that are soon to no longer work. That patch, they called it a patch, it's a jar. They said it would work not only with that update from March, they said it would also work with the prior update. So you could actually put it on a prior update. If you really don't want to go to the March update, yes, you can put the patch in. It's just a jar. You just drop the jar in and it will work with the updates from October. The previous updates were from October. It works with that. Okay. And Adobe said so. Well, I went a step further and I found that it worked even with the update before that. But it did not work with the update before that. Now, what's interesting about all that is that means they were already working on this notion of, hey, could we detect when people use variables that aren't scoped and it gets looked for in these scopes that shouldn't be looked at? They were providing for that jar to work in a way. Well, actually, I should back up. Maybe they're leveraging something that happened to be in those older updates, because it just did work. I'm telling you, it does work. If we use the numbers of CF 2023, it works not only with update 7, but also with update 6 and with update 5. It does. Now, on the other side, let me say this. It also works with update 8. That's the June update. And everything I'm saying is true with 2021 as well. But let's just make it easy. It works with the March update, which is 7 for 2023. It works with the June update, which is update 8. But this is very important. And I think you maybe were getting at this earlier, Dakota, actually it's a different point, but it's an important point to make. This is very important. When Adobe provides such special jars that you drop into that live updates folder of like CFusion live updates, the next update you do, everything in that live updates folder is removed for the next update, because they presume that every update they would do, they should remove any special fixes that were provided because the next update should have them. Well, as you guys may know, there's been some updates where they came out with a fix for something in October of 2022 that still did not get resolved until like October of 2023. So every update between then, when you applied the update, if you needed that special jar, you had to put the jar back in place every time you did an update, because they clean house of that live updates folder. And I know this is a bit much for some people to follow. I'll just say I cover it in my blog post. In that one last night, I covered that point about that jar and how it's removed in subsequent updates and how you can put it back. It's real simple, and where to find it. It makes a backup of it in the update folder. So again, let's not go down those weeds together talking about it. It's just better to look at the blog post, follow the steps. But yeah, you'll have to put it back in, and it does work with the subsequent updates, and you'll just keep putting it in. And this is the kind of thing people have to keep putting in subsequent updates going forward. If they want that logging feature, they're going to have to remember to do it. And if Adobe comes out with one to log this CFMX compat issue, again, you'll have to remember to put that in every update. And I don't know if they think this stuff through sometimes. That's painful, right? There should be a way that doesn't happen. But
and easily forgotten. I mean, you're in the middle of an update. Especially with these, you're like, okay, I did my code fix. Your focus is solely on the code fix for 8, and you're not thinking that you needed to add the jar file back.
But it only stopped the logging from working. So as long as you're not looking at that and going, oh, cool, we don't have the problem anymore. There's no more log lines being tracked.
Wow, update 8 fixed all our issues. That's amazing.
Oh my God. You can see somebody concluding that. Yes. Oh my goodness.
That is the new fix. That's why they added the feature, is so that they fix this stuff.
I'll just say that in conclusion, that's why people need good hosting companies who can help take care of these problems and inform you of it. And then I'm here to help everybody who doesn't have that sort of backstop. But keep an eye on the community. There's a CFML Slack channel for CF. There's a Facebook CF programmers group. There's a LinkedIn CF programmers group. There's the Adobe ColdFusion forums. And then there's the Orders forums and Lucy forums. And people should just keep an eye on these community resources. I know it's hard because there's a lot of chatter and sometimes just stuff comes and goes, but that's why it's great to have a hosting company that is, helpful in this regard. A lot of hosting companies, they don't know how to spell ColdFusion. They just offer it and you're on your own.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the plug there. I will say, on the communities out there, the Slack and Facebook are probably the most active. The LinkedIn, you can try there. I don't know how much activity I've seen on the LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, there's activity on.
Is there activity on that one?
Yep, absolutely. And I'll just throw out, I have a link to all of them. If you go to cf411.com, that's a site I've created, cf411.com. It redirects you to my website, carehart.org, to the CF411 page. And some know that that's a big, long, honking page that I've kept up to date for 20 years. And I've got resources and tools. And in the resources section, I have CF social help resources. And I list those things we just discussed. And there's also Stack Exchange and Stack Overflow and Experts Exchange and one more, which have CF categories. So there are definitely ways people can keep an eye on things like this or reach out for help. So don't feel alone. I want to make that point. Don't feel like you're alone. You're not alone. There's a lot of other people dealing with, and trust me, you're not the only one left doing ColdFusion. That's BS. There's thousands and thousands of people doing ColdFusion. They, hundreds of them go to the different conferences. There was CF Camp last month in Germany, and there was Into the Box before that in DC, and there was the CF Summit East before that in Virginia, and then there's the CF Summit in Vegas that was in October and will come up in September. And those are different people that come, hundreds of people that come to each one. And that's the people that go to conferences. Somebody's listening, they don't go to conferences, so you don't get counted. I'm telling you, there's thousands of you who are heads down doing your job, and bless you for even paying attention to a podcast to learn about this stuff. There's a lot of people that don't do anything. They don't read anything. They don't watch anything. And they just sit there in their cubicles and lament that things are terrible when there's these wonderful resources. If you just would reach out and take advantage of them, it's still a great community. CF is still, and Lucy as well. They're just great communities, and Ortus is doing great things to bolster both of them even more. So, and good for you guys again for what you're doing. Appreciate that.
Well, we can kind of end on that caring comment by now I will never forget that.
There you go.
Because you like that segue? Yeah. See,
very good. Smooth.
Caring. Yep. From so it's careheart.org and Charlie Arehart. I had to stop myself from saying the C. Charlie Arehart.
Yeah, there's that.
Boom, I got it now. So yes, thank you again. So again, careheart.org. You can take a look at his stuff. We got xbytecloud.com if you want to take a look at our things. And however you're listening to this, you can tune back into that for more videos, more audio recordings. Just thank you very much. Any final comments, Dakota? I know you I know unfortunately you've been up for many hours with the CrowdStrike issue. So thank you very much for joining us today. Any final words, and we'll leave it to Charlie for one final comment.
I'll just add, Charlie, thanks for taking the time to join this session with us and share your valuable insight. And you've been a great voice within the community. I know a lot of CFers out there look to you for your thoughts, processes. So just thank you for making the time.
Hope to do it, you guys. And it's great. Again, there's a lot of great people in the community that love to share. And so I'm glad to be counted among those. And the tagline I always say is, I just want to help. As always, I just want to help. So glad I was able to jump. Thank you for having me come on. I was glad I was able to contribute, and I'd look forward to any other opportunities like that.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And as Charlie said, we're all just here to help. So please reach out to any of us. We are here to help. And as we say, just thank you guys and have a great day. Bye, guys.